All right, Riley, let's take a look at your paper. MLA format first. You need to make sure that this is the same font as the rest of your paper. Everything here is good. I'm not totally thrilled with that title. I'm not even exactly sure. Even after reading your introduction, I'm not exactly sure how mysticism has anything to do with it, but maybe you'll get to it eventually. So you start off talking about Macbeth. Now, this is dangerous because you haven't brought up the play or the um, author yet. So what I would do is I would start with the definition of a warrior. A warrior can be defined as, quote, a brave or experienced soldier or fighter, or something like that. And I don't even know if an Oxford dictionary, like a regular dictionary entry, would be the most effective. Why not like define it how maybe a soldier would define it? Like, what is a warrior to a soldier? And maybe that would make more sense into like the mind of a warrior, because this isn't a really specific or interesting definition. So I would maybe think about doing that as your attention getter. Then lead into the idea of what that means, what it meant back then or now, and then relate it to back then, and then you tie in Shakespeare's play Macbeth, which you don't do till way down here. Macbeth would be considered a warrior by these terms, and it wasn't uncommon for warriors to come home, and then you can go on from there. Okay, now I said this in another paper. I don't think it's important for you to say, "Oh, if only Macbeth could have gotten help." Just look back and say, "He had this. It's obvious he had it. Here are the symptoms. Here's what it did to him." That's what I'd be focused on. You chose to do your thesis statement all in one sentence. There's nothing wrong with that, other than I will tell you that it would be nice to lay out these behaviors first, or these symptoms first, before you actually get into it. Because actually, your thesis is great. I'm hoping it really is expanded upon in the body, but I feel like if you really just went through some of those symptoms first and then got to this, it would have been much stronger. I mean, you already have a pretty long introduction, but I don't know, just one little thing to think about for if you happen to do a rewrite. All right, so I really like your topic sentence. You're one of the first people that I haven't really harped on about topic sentences, so good job, Riley. All right, so you talk about emotional numbness, and here's what I would do. Actually, the first time you mention it is when you put it in here. I would put the quote like after this sentence maybe, and then I know that these couple of things are related to that. So you give the example of when he finds out she's ill. Go back to the disorder, may feel but not know how to. Numbing can be episodic and not continuous. And then I would use maybe he does love his wife. Maybe use the quote at the beginning, the partner, perfect partner of greatness, or whatever he says at the beginning. Very dear to him. Maybe use a different term it means the same thing. One word that means the same thing, just so you can get rid of very. You need a comma here. And this is what I was talking about. I think the exact quote is something about perfect partner in greatness, and you use perfect partner in crime, which is like a wah, wah moment, because obviously they are partners, physical partners in crime. So his post-traumatic stress disorder triggers due to the stressful situation. So his disorder triggers. Shouldn't it trigger his disorder? I don't know. I think it's kind of awkwardly worded there. I know what you're trying to say, though. So you use good quotes in here. He then carries on to talk about the war. This is where you would use a colon. Okay, so he talks about the war and then use the quote. This one, it makes sense. Macbeth says cure of that. It's all like one continuous sentence, but this is not. So that's where you would use a colon to introduce that. You analyze the symptom as it relates to the story, which is really good. If Macbeth would have gone, he could have prevented her suicide. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I like that you're thinking about it. He ends up with he left his wife with the doctors. I don't think that's true either. I don't think the doctor was really in charge of her when she died. I don't know if you remember, but the doctor, after Macbeth does all of this talk here, the doctor says, "I'm getting out of here." So he wasn't even by Lady Macbeth when she died. So keep that in mind. His longing for power cost his wife her life. It's a little bit awkward. I mean, it's a nice rhyme, I guess. I would love for you just a little bit more talk about that concept, how because he was so worried about England, I mean, you do kind of there. He doesn't have time to worry about her. I'd love just to dive into it, like maybe one more sentence there. You need a transitional statement to go from this sentence to the next sentence. So I'd love to see a better transitional statement here to lead us into the next one. All right, so we get into the death of many. Use this, and here's what I would say. You have at least 2 sentences after the citation that I think are still from the same source. And I know we talked about, you and Kenzie and I talked about this in class. I know I talked about, well, once you use it once, I'll assume everything after that. I'm going to kind of renege that a little bit and say probably after this one, I would use that citation again, as long as it's from the same source. Just use it down here. I think that's going to make it even more clear that this information is not your own. It is from another source. After every single sentence, not necessarily, but I think that needs one more citation there. I'm not going to ding you or knock any points off, but just think about that for the future. All right, so he suffers from persistent guilt. This is your topic sentence for this one, and it's weaker. Remember, I really like the first one. This one I don't like. It's not specific enough. So you're going to talk about guilt, and you do talk about killing Duncan, but I would argue that a lot of this paragraph is not needed. I don't need to know. I'm more focused on, I would be more worried about the guilt itself. I don't care about the bell. I don't think it's necessary to talk about this, to talk about his guilt, okay? But what is necessary is after he kills Duncan, because he does feel guilt, and I think this is really the only true place in the play that he actually feels guilty about doing something, because you bring up Banquo, but I don't think he feels guilty about killing him. I mean, maybe you could argue that, I don't know. I just don't see it. But there is, and this is what shocks me. I'm shocked that you didn't bring up any of the quotes in Act 2, Scene 2, after he kills Duncan. Looking at his hands, this is a sorry sight. And at the end, wake Duncan with thy knocking. I wish thou could. I would thou couldest. There's some great quotes about how torn up he is about this act. And you don't use any of them. And instead, you actually jump really quick to paranoia after this. So all of this guilt and paranoia and remorse leads to him feeling guilty about Banquo. Okay? Which I would buy into this if you tied it in a little bit better with Banquo's murder. They've been together, that's true, but how come Banquo doesn't suffer from it then? So I'm not sure if that's really a good argument right now. Macbeth convinces himself that in order to stay king, he needs to murder Banquo because he stands in the way of staying king. See how that's kind of a little bit, word choice-wise, not that great. Clearly a consequence of post-traumatic stress disorder. Murdering your friend is a consequence, or being paranoid is a consequence. I think you need to be a little bit more specific there. Okay? And this is what I was afraid of. Now even though within the body you're doing a better job of kind of trying to tie in the thesis, we get to the end and you're just repeating the thesis again, and that's not strong. You still need a strong transition too. At the end of this body paragraph. All right, so you talk about the repercussions of being a soldier. They build on a chain reaction. And then you get into hallucinations. I still don't have a strong topic sentence in here. And you use that here, and again, just like I said before, I think you have way too many sentences after that are from that website. I think you need to cite it again so that I know that's where you're getting it from. So he has the hallucination as the ghost. I don't know if I agree with this, that because he believes it's his fault that he's there. I guess I could kind of buy into it, but makes him see Banquo's ghost. I just think I might need a little bit more buy-in from you, a little bit more evidence. So use a quote, 3 lines. I think you could probably cut that down even a little bit more. Makes him lose all self-control. You could tie this in. I think that might be he loses all consciousness. He's very unconscious of what's around him. I really like that idea. And this is the part that she's referring specifically. Okay, let me back up. I don't think this has happened before. necessarily. She's trying to protect him and say, oh yeah, he's done this before, as a way to whatever. But she does make reference that, this is the airborne dagger that draw you to Duncan's chambers. She does make reference that she knows he's hallucinated before, but I don't think it's a habit. It isn't the first hallucination, because we know there's the dagger scene, but I don't know if it's a habit necessarily that makes you think that he's been doing this his whole life. I don't know if that's really what she meant by this. I like hellish hallucination. That's good wording. And then you talk about the witches, but literally it's like, oh, and there's the witches, and he's got false confidence and he dies. So I don't even know why you'd bring it up, because I don't think it's important at this point. I think the apparition can be important if you really want to take some time with it, but the way that you present it makes it seem not that important. All right, let's get to your conclusion. All right, so then we get into conclusion. Repeat your thesis, which is good. Take a sentence to talk about each main point, which is good. Clean up some word choice here. Set off a bad idea. I mean, you can do better than that. And this is weak, because all you're saying is that he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, that's what you wrote your whole paper about. You don't need to repeat it again. And it leads to his downfall, which is what the topic was. And it's not a clincher. It doesn't lead us out. Go back to the concept of what a warrior is. Go back to what it does to, I don't know, do something with that. Works cited page. If these are your, I think this is what you used in your in-text citations, but remember, what you use for in-text is whatever shows up first here. So Nader, Achberg, they need to be what's in the parentheses, because that's how a professor or a teacher, when they see, let me find one, when they see this, they're like, oh, I'm going to go to hallucinations down in the works cited page. Oh, there's hallucinations right there. That's what they want to see there. So everything else is correct. It's in alphabetical order, which is what you want, but you just in-text cited it wrong. So lots of good things, Riley, about your paper, but still need to tie that thesis in a little bit better and maybe clean up some of those examples.